Welcome to We Are All the Shades podcast. I am your host, Jerry. I'm a mental health advocate spreading awareness, education, and creating access in support of this movement for multicultural communities, bringing you weekly conversations and storytelling by connecting with healers, coaches, educators, and wellness guides to talk about well and care practices that serve and empower our overall collective awakening. Thank you for being here and for joining the journey of self-discovery and growth. Hello, and welcome to We Are All the Shades podcast. I am your host, Jerry, and I'm really excited to introduce myself and introduce the why behind We Are All the Shades podcast. So thank you for tuning in to this very first episode, an introduction and a welcome to this community. But let me first start off by breaking the ice a little bit and describing to you what I'm wearing, because you're probably wearing the same thing. And I like to call it the quarantine fit. And I'd like to acknowledge that we've hit this 1-year mark of being in this pandemic and having gone through multiple lockdowns and restrictions. And I saw a meme circulating on the webs and the internet, and it really hit home because I was just like, yes, this is it. Welcome to the 1-year anniversary of the 2-week lockdown. And I was just like, shit, it's been a year of this madness. So yeah, I wanted to share that I'm like wearing my pajamas. I'm not wearing a bra. I haven't even washed my face. I haven't even brushed my teeth. I know that's kind of gross. I also have a cup of coffee next to me, and so I might be sipping on it and might be a little bit of ASMR happening. So sorry if you're not into that. And I'm also talking to myself in my living room. So yes, I am officially a hot mess. And I look like a hot mess. And I'm sharing all of this because I think it's important that we've all to acknowledge and to embrace the fact that we all had to embrace our hot messness, right? And what that looks like a year into this pandemic. Because really, in this last year, we've had to come face to face with so many shadows and shades and emotions and workings of ourselves, and kind of sit with and go through all of that. And so I just wanted to start by saying that because I want to send compassion your way. And if you're also braless or you're rocking the quarantine fit and you haven't even washed your face either, or you're sitting in your PJs or your day PJs, because best believe I have my nighttime PJs and I have my daytime PJs that look more like activewear, leisure, or whatever it's called, leisure, I think that's how you say it. And so if you're talking to yourself as well in your living room going a little stir crazy, I just want to say I feel you. I feel you because it's important to acknowledge that fact, that this is real life, and we're all going through this super weird moment in time, and we've all had to come to terms with the reality of all of this is super challenging and confusing and hard and rough, and it potentially has been really isolating, however you've experienced this. So, I just wanted to say thank you, for being here and for listening and for showing up however you are right now. I embrace you. And although I can't see you, I feel you. And so with that being said, once again, I do want to thank you for tuning in and for listening to this introduction, just as you are. So yeah, I wanted to take this time to share a little bit about my story and, the why behind, and my motivation behind creating the We Are All the Shades podcast and initiative. And so yeah, let's get right into it. And I'm hoping to keep this real brief and sweet, but I don't want to promise that I'm not gonna, go off on tangents, because I do get a little excited sometimes and like to talk a lot. So yeah, I'm going to do my best to, to kind of get to it, and also apologize if the recording isn't top notch. I am wearing a gamer's headset, but I do plan on getting a proper setup. And so if there is a little fuzziness in the recording, I apologize for that, but it will get better, I promise. So this is just the beginning. So like I said, I am Geraldine, but I like to go by Jerry. And I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, LA, but I've been living in Barcelona, Spain since 2009. So in October of this year, it's going to be officially 12 years since I moved and came out here. And when I say moved, I kind of say it in that way because this move wasn't really like planned out. It was not, this uprooting of my life in a way and coming to live abroad was not part of a real master plan at all. Like, I would say it's definitely unfolded in a lot of different magical ways, but it wasn't part of my original plan or path that I initially wanted to embark on and take. And so, if anything, originally I came out with the intention of spending 1 year out in Barcelona to just get the travel bug out of my system and be free and explore and have that experience, because I always wanted to study abroad while I was in college and I didn't get to do that. And so after I graduated, when I saw this opportunity presented to me, I thought, why not? And so I initially thought, okay, I'm going to go to Barcelona for a year. I'm going to, get the travel bug out of my system and travel and be free and explore and do all of that. And then after, I was going to go back home to America and either, start a master's program or get right into the workforce and start my career path. But that didn't quite happen at all the way I had planned. And so what started as like my 1 year journey here turned into like a 12-year hiatus. And so I thought I'd start by sharing that part of my story, because it's really one of the biggest detours that I am so grateful for. And, that initial detour is what led me to even more, wonderful, crazy, scary, random missteps to lead me to where I'm at today. And, I say that because I also don't think that I have it all figured out. And, a lot of people are curious about, hey, how did you end up living out there? And it really just happened in a lot of, it just happened non-intentionally in a way. And then now that I look back, there was intention behind it, but I guess I didn't know that I was putting intention behind it. But it really just happened because I made all these different choices at specific points in my lifetime, in my life, that really shaped the trajectory and where I'm at now. So yeah, I wanted to start there. So like I mentioned, I moved out here, or I came out here when I was it was 2009, and I was 24. And, like I said, I'm originally from LA. So by that point, I had recently graduated college in, 2008. And after graduating college, I graduated from Cal State Northridge. I had kind of still had this, not regret, but in a way, like this sensation and nudging in within me of wanting to explore living abroad and studying abroad. And I didn't get to do that. And, before I get into that experience, briefly, let me just go further back and actually start the story where my parents actually, where their journey began, and kind of how, just kind of tap into that a little bit, because I think it'll give you a little bit more insight as to my backstory and, who I am and my identity and all that. So I am a first generation Salvadoran American, which means that my parents are originally from a small little country in Central America called El Salvador. It actually, unfortunately, has a really bad rep for crime and gang violence. But to me, and, I have last time I was there, I was 15 actually, and that was 21 years ago. What it really symbolizes, and the people from El Salvador, and seeing, the people in LA and visiting the country itself, it represents and resembles to me resilience and solidarity, and kind of seeing how people commune and collectively support each other through hardships is really what stands out to me when I think of someone that's from El Salvador and any of these countries in Latin America, really. That's what that represents to me. And I think now in El Salvador and things are turning around politically. But at the time in the early 80s, my parents were actually part of the Salvadoran diaspora, people who migrated to the States. My parents migrated to California because of the breakout of the El Salvadoran Civil War. So at the time, that's where they were faced with this huge decision to either continue living life or trying to live their life in El Salvador, and start a family and, kind of pursue and live their life. But, it was really challenging and difficult because there was civil unrest and it wasn't safe anymore for them. And so, as they were in the middle of a civil war, it was really uncertain times for them and having to make decisions. And so, on top of that trauma of this civil war breaking out and, kind of seeing things crumbling, and which, by the way, the civil war was actually funded by the US. And that's a whole other topic and probably episode for another day that maybe I'll invite someone to speak a little bit more on that history. Um, but yeah, on top of that trauma that was happening, I would say they had experienced another traumatic event where my mom had given birth to a stillborn baby at a hospital where basically because of the mayhem, the turmoil, the war that was breaking out in the San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador, um, there was just it was just madness. And so due to medical malpractice, unfortunately, my parents lost a baby, and that was super traumatic for both of them. And that ultimately is what led my dad to make that fateful decision to migrate and get out of the country. After that experience, he just saw it was going to be very challenging and very difficult, and he didn't see any other way out of this, and he didn't see how things could get better. So like anyone that wants to provide and create a family and provide safety and comfort and protection, he thought that the best thing that he could do was to uproot his family, migrate to the States, and kind of try his luck in an unknown foreign country, not speaking the language, and embarking on this journey to really start from scratch, basically start fresh. And so in the early 80s, my dad arrived to LA in 83. He lived with my aunt for a couple months or maybe almost up to a year while he was looking for work. He would study English at night school. He ended up getting a janitor job and basically saved enough money to get an immigration lawyer to help him send for my mom. And this is where I say the solidarity of the Salvadorian people really, they step up and help everyone, and even in Latin communities, just seeing that is just amazing. And basically my dad managed to save enough money and he got introduced to this immigration lawyer who really helped him get my mom out over to LA. And so my mom arrived in 84 and I was born in 85. So yeah, that makes me 36. And yeah, I think I'm starting to come to terms with being in my mid 30s and I'm embracing all my little aha moments. And, I'm feeling like I'm stepping into and having these really big shifts and ideas and this like consciousness. And it's really awesome. And so I say that because and I mentioned that, and it's important because I feel like it's taken me a while. And sometimes I would judge myself and be like, how come I'm not like those other grownups where I felt like, I don't know, I would compare myself to a celebrity that was like a similar age of mine. And I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all these accomplishments this person has. And they're same age as me. Like, and I would, kind of be judgmental towards my accomplishments. And so I feel like now I'm actually feeling very happy and proud of like all the missteps and all of my mistakes and all of the different little paths that I've taken to kind of get me where I'm at today. And, I bring that up because I could see now that that allows me to be be observant and have this observation of kind of myself, but also to provide compassion for my family members and kind of like seeing and understanding what they were going through at my age and how my life is completely different to what they were experiencing at the time when, they shared the same age. At 36, my mom was raising two kids, working several jobs to make ends meet. My dad was grinding and working hard. So I look back and I'm like, wow, like, they did accomplish that, and so I really bring that up because I feel like I can look back now and understand when I was a teen and my parents would say certain things to me and I would be super resentful and bratty teenager and not understand the sacrifices. And now I look back and I'm like, holy shit, like my life is nothing compared to what they've experienced. And I'm so grateful and I can be so compassionate, and I know there's still a lot of trauma there for them, and that I've gotten to tap into my own self-discovery and investigation work is a privilege, and that's why I bring that up. And, I've gone to therapy and been able to pursue my own curiosities, which is my intuition. And that's why I wanted to start with sharing my trip to Barcelona. And kind of what brought me here is really, at the time, I had absolutely no idea that that deeper knowing, that nudge, was in my intuition, and I wouldn't be able to place a finger on it before. But now looking back, because of the work that I've done, I could see it as that, right? So I say their story as well because it gives testimony to their experiences and what they wanted to provide for my sister and I. And that even though the American dream that they wanted me to accomplish, that I'm kind of doing that in another country, I am fulfilling that dream, even though it doesn't look like what they had envisioned or what I had, or society had mapped out for me in a way, and what was expected. So yeah. So going back to college, as I mentioned, because I was a first generation Salvadorian American, I was expected to go to college, get a degree. And of course, that milestone in itself was really important for me to accomplish for my family members, because none of my other family members had gone to pursue higher education. So I was one of the first in my family. So that was really important. So, like I said, I went to Cal State Northridge, and originally I did get accepted to UC Santa Barbara, but I didn't go because, I couldn't afford it. I didn't want to take out loans. And because in our Salvadoran culture and a lot of Latin American cultures or Latino cultures, um, the there's this huge uh, value on like family first, community, like the collective. And so it wasn't part of the norm for me to like uproot and leave at 18 and go and live the college life. And so I decided, okay, maybe it's best for me to stay back and pursue an education closer to home. I mean, I was a 45-minute drive from LA to Northridge. And so, that's what I did. And then at the time as well, to kind of even give you more context and backstory, my mom, as I mentioned, she's worked several different jobs. She used to work at a coffee shop, and then she would housekeep and be a nanny for different families before working for this family that she ended up working for over 20 years. My dad was a silkscreen printer, and he became the director of that department in his company. And so, that's kind of what they ended up doing. Learn the language, broken English, and kind of just grinded their way, to really be able to provide for me. And so when my mom started working for this family, when I turned 18, because I had pretty much grown up with them and the child as well that they had, it was a no-brainer for me to end up working for them as their weekend nanny. So as I mentioned, they were a very high profile family, and it was a good opportunity for me because I can go to school actually from Monday to Friday, and then nanny on the weekends for this family. So really, it was an experience that gave me access to my education, because as I was getting paid really well, and of course they were supportive of my education, and they would fund certain college tuition, my books, and even obviously they were paying me for this job. It was almost like this exchange of like, we're supporting you, and like in a way you're kind of providing the service for us as being the weekend nanny. And of course at 18, that was challenging, man. Like, I missed out on a lot of fun stuff over the weekends, and I ended up working for them for 6 years. And there did get a point in that 6 year period where I was going to college, and, I was missing out on these events on the weekends, social events with my friends, trips. And, I was resentful. I was resentful because I didn't understand this dynamic that was like this unspoken dynamic that we had. And, looking back, I am 100% grateful of that experience. And I do not regret anything, that I went through with this family, because it really did give me access to other experiences that I think were the reasons why I pursued, traveling abroad and exploring that curiosity. But it was challenging because, my mom had really developed this relationship with them, and she felt like she was in service to them constantly. And when I became their weekend nanny, she was so honored, and she had a lot of pride around that. And so she wanted me to not let them down. She wanted to demonstrate, hard work. People, Latinos are really hardworking people, and like, we show up, and even to our own detriment and health, we still grind to the bone. And that's what they knew. That's, the work ethic they were bringing. And so I don't see that as a bad thing. I see that, my mom was trying to instill that in me, but I was grappling and kind of having this cognitive dissonance of okay, well, family comes first. That's the, values that were instilled in me because I'm a Salvadoran American, but I'm also an American. And in America, we're very individualistic. Pursue your dreams, go and do your thing, like, explore what you want and your needs and your desires and your dreams. So it was really difficult for me to grapple with those two. But I bring that up to say that with this family, I was able to travel and, have these like lavish experiences and trips to Europe and Mexico and across America. And one of our first trips was actually to Morocco. And that was really when I was so mesmerized. And that was one of my first actually cross-Atlantic trips. It was over to Morocco. And that experience was really the catalyst behind me wanting to pursue traveling and not really jump right into the workforce. So, I was still going to college at the time. I was working for this family, and, I had looked into a study abroad programs, but I didn't really feel like it was an option for me because one, of the nature of my job. Two, I also found that it was financially, maybe potentially really expensive. And three, it was, my parents were really nervous about the whole idea of me living abroad and all of that. So I kind of decided that it wasn't going to happen for me. And so when I did see friends of mine that did do study abroad programs, it was really difficult. I really wanted to do that. And so after I graduated, so I graduated in 2008, I still left with this sensation and this deep wanting and calling for me to do that and have a study abroad experience. And especially because I'd been traveling with this family via a very protective bubble, via, very set agendas and itineraries, and not a lot of like flexibility to explore and get lost and, get lost in the souks in Morocco and be able to just kind of venture off and kind of let things flow and unfold. So I really wanted to travel on my own terms, on my own dime, and really kind of get lost and just be free on my own without any pressures. And so back in 2008, a friend of mine was actually studying in Paris, and we decided to organize a trip to go visit her. And that's my first introduction and the first time I came out here to Barcelona and fell in love with the culture, with the city. It just reminded me so much of parts of Southern California. I mean, Barcelona's on this Mediterranean coast. It's absolutely beautiful. And for me, it was always really important to, I don't know, I just love the idea of like having the sea and the mountains and all this like different variety of landscape. It was so impressive to me. And so for whatever reason, I felt this really strong connection to Barcelona when I came on that trip. And so to fast forward a little bit, because I'm not trying to extend this too long, I met a couple actually on the flight from Barcelona back to Paris as we were heading from Paris back to LA. And they shared their traveling experiences, and they were sharing the fact that they were doing a teaching English course, which allowed them to get certified and become English teachers. And so this teaching English course is known as TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language. And so they were taking a 4-week intensive course in Barcelona, and they were going to get certified and then potentially either go to Southeast Asia or go to South America, or, pretty much you can go anywhere in the world where the certification is accepted and potentially get sponsored by a country that will provide you housing and a work contract and a working visa to go and teach English at their schools or in their communities. And so when they introduced this idea to me, it planted a seed. And I was like, wow, I haven't lost, the opportunity, and I haven't missed the train on being able to travel and live abroad, because I really wanted to do that. And so as on my return from that trip, I was really curious. And so I did my research. I got back and I decided I'm going to do some research on this TEFL program. And I found out this whole new world. I mean, there were so many opportunities. And even now you can totally get TEFL certified, even from the States, and get sponsored. Actually, a friend of mine ended up moving and living in South Korea for like 5 years. And another friend of mine went to China. And so really, I know with the pandemic, it's probably a little tricky right now, but it's an option. So I had absolutely no idea about this option. I was so excited about it because I thought that I had missed the boat. And so when I got back from this trip, I decided to announce it and tell everyone, hey, I'm going to go and travel and get a TEFL certification. And I chose Barcelona. And so this was January 2009. And fast forward 6 months later, I hadn't actually taken any steps, any action towards making this reality happen. This whole time, I had told people, I had announced it because I wanted to hold myself accountable. When I announced it, I let society, I let my family, I let friends kind of get in the way of that decision, and kind of it made me just start to question my decision. And really what the sensation that I was getting is, because post-graduation, we all have this really big pressure and expectation to figure it all out. Like, what are you going to do next? Where are you going to go? And those questions of what I was going to do with my degree, which, by the way, was a communications degree, which is so generic, I had absolutely no idea. And I really, really wanted to travel. And again, going back to the dynamic that I had with this family, this really prominent, powerful Hollywood family, I felt like I couldn't leave. It'd already been 6 years and I was pretty burnt out at this point. I felt like I had done my part, and it was like this mutual transaction. I don't want to say that because it just feels very wrong, but it really was, of like, you've provided, I'm so grateful for the opportunities I've had with this family and the service that I've provided for you, but I have sacrificed my weekends and I'm ready to kind of move on and kind of see what else is out there. But I knew that it meant a lot for my mom to kind of continue. And it was like this path was already outlined for me of like safety, of comfort, which is understandable because my parents obviously wanted to provide that for me because they didn't have that. And so it was attractive because it was good money. Potentially, I could get introduced to other opportunities, via this family. And that can lead, elsewhere to a more linear path, right? Of the path of like, you got a college degree, you get your education, you go in your career path, you start in the workforce, the story. And so I wasn't really convinced about that. I really don't judge that. I'm not saying that anyone who pursues that, it's wrong. I'm just saying that I really want to embrace how life can unfold in so many different ways. And that can look so different than the typical mold and the typical ideal that we're taught, and that we're taught to strive for, of, pursuing all these milestones. And then once you've done these, it's almost like you've won at life, but there's no competition here. So again, going back to my roots, I was conflicted with family, kind of not letting them down, and then also pursuing my own, what I wanted, figuring it out. Like, what about what Jerry wants? What about what Jerry wants to explore? What about, my own curiosity and this nudging feeling that I had deep within me to explore. So where do so I'm trying not to get lost here. So basically, in summer of June 2009, my best friend Carlos booked a flight to Barcelona for September, and booked a reservation for this course because I had been telling him about this. And he called me up one day and he was like, "Hey, Jerry, I booked a flight and I booked my course. I'm going to Barcelona in September." And I was like, "What?" And I was completely, I wouldn't say it was devastation, but it was like shock, because I thought, wait, this was my idea. And so that call and his decision to go out there really lit a fire under my ass. And really, that's where things just kind of like shifted so drastically for me, because I had been saving money up until this point, but I hadn't done anything to change, and make this a reality. So when he called me, literally probably 2 weeks after, I also booked my flight and my reservation for the following course of the next month in October. And I knew I needed to face and make this decision. And at this time, there was a lot of urgency around like, okay, Jerry, like, you graduated in May 2008. It's like June. It's been a year since you graduated. What are you doing with your life? Like, figure it out. And, I really wanted to travel, and I keep saying that. And it was really that. So I decided to face the music, tell this family that I wanted to pursue this. They threw more money at me in the beginning and kind of questioned why I want to do that, and how they could, introduce me to different companies and what I wanted to pursue. And briefly, I did intern at a PR firm and briefly interned as well at the E! News Network. And that was really fun. That experience was really cool. But I didn't really feel like it was for me. I also at the time didn't realize, like, now that we have all these terminology and we're bringing these conversations of when we felt uncomfortable in spaces that we didn't feel welcome to, I felt like an imposter in a lot of these circles and a lot of these places that I was in, sharing with, with these privileged people that I just felt like my story was completely different. My background's completely different. And so having access to these different networks, I felt like I had an opportunity to pursue that, but I knew that I still needed to uh, owe it to myself to really explore that. So once I made that decision, and once, I booked that flight and booked that reservation, it made it real. I had my skin in the game. I had decided that that was going to happen. And I was like, oh shit, this is real. And, Carlos really is the reason behind that decision. And I give him a lot of credit to that. And, initially my parents thought that Carlos and I were eloping and living our love story in Barcelona. Or that's what we wanted to do, because my dad caught Carlos and I sleeping in the same bed one night after we came back from partying in Rijo. Carlos is my gay bestie, but at the time my dad didn't know that, or didn't refuse to believe it. So that's the story they made up. And, so when we decided Carlos left first. He was telling me all about how the course was amazing, how his experiences. I came a month later. And, before I get into that detail, I'm gonna be straight up. Like, I knew when I made the decision of coming to Barcelona and I was going to be here for a year, because that's the timeline or the deadline I gave myself. I knew well into the decision that I was going to be coming here illegally. And by illegally, I mean that with a tourist visa, when you step into the Schengen area or the EU, you basically get a stamp to allow you to freely travel within the European Union for 3 months. But after that 3-month period, you are considered illegally trespassing. Your visa is no longer valid. So in order for you to have an extended stay or a long-term stay, technically you'd have to get a working visa. So you'd have to get sponsored by a company, or a student visa, meaning you'd have to go to school so you can get a student visa. And it's not an easy process, either of those. And so I knew that first year I was going to be illegal, and a lot of people had a lot of difficulty understanding that. And so just so you know, I am legal. I've been legal for 10 years. That's a whole other story. It's not as easy as it looks. And a lot of people think like, oh, we have a US passport, we can just get away with coming out here. And it doesn't really work like that. So I knew well into the decision that I was going to be here legally. So I knew that I was going to be doing some unlawful things, but I decided to take that risk. And I think it's important for me to address this part, because the risk of me staying out here illegally and getting caught and maybe getting stopped by the police asking for, documentation, and seeing that potentially I've overstayed my tourist visa, was that they could either fine me, voluntarily ask me to leave, or deport me back to the States. And so for me, that risk factor was really low, because worst case scenario, I'm getting deported back to America. Um, and in that situation, I say it that way because I feel like I was very privileged, because my worst case scenario was the best case scenario for other people, right? Like, it was safe for me to go back to America. But unlike many other people that come to Spain or other parts of Europe and migrate, their situation looks different, and actually looks a lot more similar to the situation my parents were in when they came to America. So I knew that my struggle was not going to be the same at all. So for me, it was the risk worth taking of like coming out here and being illegal, was because the worst case, I'm going to get kicked back to America. And so since then, a year went by. And after that whole year of being here in Barcelona, I felt like it was not enough time. And so I was like, I don't want to go home yet. And that was hard too, because I was like, should I go back and get my master's? It's been a year. That you said you were going to be here for a year. But 1 year turned into 2, turned into 3, and now it's going to be 12 in October. So it's been a journey. And as for Carlos, I'm going to briefly say, oh man, like when I get him on here, I want to talk about this if he's open and willing to. But unfortunately, Carlos got deported. And that's a whole story in itself, but he ended up getting stopped at the airport when he was picking up his cousin, because she was spending Christmas with us, our first Christmas here in Barcelona. And that was a whole dilemma. He got detained. He didn't have the documentation. I had to bring it to the airport, the whole fiasco. And then by the end of it, he had to voluntarily leave the country. So his departure and leaving Barcelona, and at this point, we've had, a wonderful time. We were like Bonnie and Clyde. He was my sidekick. We were two peas in the pod. Like, we were doing this together. For me, it was so important that this person was the reason why, like, it lit that fire under my ass to get my ass out here. If it weren't for him, I don't know if I would have ever left, and if I'd still be in my head about leaving, no, exploring this. So I owe it a lot to him because I'm here. And, when he got deported and that departure, I was like, shit, I'm on this journey on my own now. Like, this is what you wanted, Jerry. Like, you wanted to be here, but I didn't want my friend to get deported, obviously. I wanted that journey, but I wanted to experience it with Carlos. And so I felt like it was up to me to kind of live that for the both of us. And I knew he was so crushed because his trip turned his trip here in Barcelona and his experience here in Barcelona was cut short. I mean, he'd only been here for only over 3 months. So really, when Carlos left, that's where this whole story of me kind of really now being on my own and not having my sidekick, my buddy Carlos, I had to step up and show up for myself. And, it really put me to the test of like, you wanted to be on this journey, you wanted to be free, here you go. Unfortunately, your friends has to go. And I want to say that Carlos's journey has really unfolded so beautifully, and our paths are super different, but just as valid. And, it was a reality check of like, this is life. Now you got to show up. So fast forward to now, I'm going to tell you, I've hosted a variety of jobs, from nannying as well. I did what I needed to do. I would teach English in the afternoons, and I would nanny this for this family in the mornings, and, run around across the city and even across like different parts of the city and parts of the different counties to go and teach English. And then eventually I started working for this weird ass company that ended up being like a Wolf of Wall Street type of shady ass business with some crooks and criminals. That was a bad situation. Then really I got introduced to this startup company, this company that basically was working in the health and wellness sector, providing yoga services, yoga teacher trainings, holistic services online for coaching and therapy and all that. And I'd always been dabbling and interested in that. And so really me getting introduced to this sector and being in that startup is really what led me to pursue even more my self-discovery and investigation journey. Um, so looking back, I want to share this Barcelona story briefly because I think the major takeaway from this story, and before I even knew it then, is because I had this nudge and I had this deeper knowing, and I wasn't satisfied with the life that was mapped out for me. And I really honor and acknowledge myself now and for pursuing the traveling and giving credit to Carlos. I mean, it was really a lot to do with him, but really to push myself and continue pushing myself out of my comfort zones. And that's not to say that I am by any means like actualized and I have it all figured out and I'm, a guru or a leading wellness expert or whatever you want to call it. Like, working in that startup and having all these missteps and all these detours that eventually led me down this road to more stability now. And I'm going to say to you, yes, I have the comfort, the stability now of that life. I think people think in the beginning that I was living this wonderful, lavish life. And no, I struggled. It's been hard. It's not been unicorns and rainbows, my personal journey and just surviving out here. But again, my struggle is not the same in comparison to my family and to other people that really, kind of seek asylum and seek new opportunities. And so I'm really grateful for that experience. And so before I end this, I want to share that that's how I ended up in Barcelona, and that here's where I'm at today. I've had a lot of different experiences, and because of this last job in particular that introduced me to this sector of wellness and well-being and personal development, it's what drove me to pursue that for myself and pursue that investigation work for myself. And I also want to say that it was a privilege, and it's been a privilege because I know that my parents were not able to do that. I look back and compare myself and where my mom and dad were at my age now, and they didn't have the time or the space to do that work because they were literally surviving to make ends meet, to make my sister and I have a comfortable life. And so I thought that it was really important for me to give back in a way and to see, while I've been working in the spaces for the last decade, I want to say, I didn't see a lot of representation of, cultural representation and cultural diversity. I felt like these programs and all of these services have been catered to a privileged socioeconomic bracket. And now that I'm seeing this movement of, people speaking out on mental health awareness and self-care and well and care and collective care practices, and seeing more diversity, inclusivity, and providing access, which is so important because like I said, my family didn't have that, and I have that. I'm the first generation that I get to have that. And so that's what really motivated me to create this space, is because of my relationships that I've had and where my own personal growth journey has taken me. And it's improved my relationship with myself. And not only has it impacted immediately, I've seen it firsthand impact my family members. And that's not to say that I consider myself better than them. Not at all. I'm just saying that I honor that I get to do that. And it's a privilege. And I don't think it should be. And so, really, We Are All the Shades comes from that motivation, and also acknowledging the brave voices and people and the platforms that are being created, that are creating the space and the conversation and then the initiatives, to give everyone access, and everyone in our multicultural BIPOC communities access, and not let it just be a privileged experience, to be able to do the self-discovery, pursue, kind of therapy and coaching or education around your well-being. And so I do feel very privileged and honored to be in such great company with other platforms and brands. And, even though I live abroad and I'm in Barcelona, and I'm still connected to this wonderful world where we have all these beautiful platforms where we get to connect with people all over the world, I just thought at first, why am I going to go and create another initiative when people are already doing this? But I'm like, why not? Why not join that movement? And so I'm really excited, because We Are All the Shades, as I mentioned in that intro, is really a space for collective care, mental health awareness, for multicultural communities, however you identify, and really giving you that space to learn and to grow and to explore your healing if you're ready to do that. It's not to push that on you, or pressure you, but really to empower you to pursue whatever it is you're interested, whatever topics that might be piquing your curiosity or intuition, because I do believe there is this conscious awakening happening, and it should be accessible to everyone. And as we see in this pandemic and this year that we've lived through this pandemic, there's been a lot of demand for change and movement for social justice, equity, and access and education. And I want to form part of that, and my promise to you with this initiative is to really be real and, with integrity and intention, invite and share real stories of educators, healers, coaches, therapists, and anyone that's having a human experience. And because all of these experiences are valid, to share them for collective healing. And I think that's really important. I've seen that in my family, in my circles, and through that, I just want to form part of that. So really, that's the why behind We Are All the Shades. And the name We Are All the Shades, at first glance, you look at it and you're like, oh, it's pretty self-explanatory. I think she's talking about all the shades of color of our skin. And yes, but I also want to go deeper than that, because as I've tapped into my own personal journey and discovery, I see how we're all interconnected to this beautiful universe, the solar system, everything, nature. And so I wanted to go deeper than that. I wanted something to represent all of that as well, the personal work and transformation and letting go of patterns, limiting beliefs, and all this work never stops, right? It's an ongoing process. And so as I continue to expand and learn and grow, We Are All the Shades is really kind of representing and honoring all the shades and color gradients in the color spectrum, and how beautiful that is, and all the shades in comparison to the moon, and how the moon can take on many different shades through its lunar phases, the darkness and the light, and the beautiful shades of our time and our seasons, like the warm sunny winter summers, and like the shedding of fall, and the cold dark of winter, and then the spring of like blossoming. It's just all of those just kind of interconnected to me. And so maybe I'm getting a little bit woo-woo here, but really, I believe that, we too are all the shades, of that light and that shadow and all the in between, depending on where we're at in our journeys and our experiences, our emotions. And, I think that we are all the shades is just shifting and shedding as we can, however we can, and showing up however we can through the ebb and flow of life. And I thought that was really beautiful. So that's that the thought process behind the We Are All the Shades name. And just before I wrap this up, because I realize it is getting a little bit long, I want to thank you and give you gratitude for tuning in and for listening up until this point, and really to open up the space to be, for this to be dynamic and for this to be transparent and to bring you conversations. And by doing so, I promise to weekly introduce new concepts. So I'm going to be doing my Jerry musings in my PJs, and then of course bringing you interviews and conversations, like I mentioned, with educators, guides, healers, and just people in general that are doing the damn thing. They're doing life. And so I really do hope that these conversations can be empowering to you and help connect you to you and allow you to tap into that curiosity. And I'm also curious to know about your story. So if you're out there listening and you were aligned, or you feel like you connect with what I was saying today and just my story in general, and you want to share your story because your story is just as important and give testimony to your experience, then please don't hesitate to reach out. Please follow us at We Are All the Shades on Instagram. And then I'm going to be adding some resources to this website. I just launched it, but it's still kind of in progress. So you can visit us at www.wearealltheshades.com. And I thank you and appreciate you for showing up how you are in your PJs. I'm probably going to go take a shower right now. No, I'm definitely going to go take a shower right now and, get into my second set of PJs. And I appreciate you for tuning in. And I'm looking forward to seeing how this unfolds. And I want to hear back from you. I want your feedback. So I promise to do my best to honor these conversations. And occasionally I will admit I probably will put my foot in my mouth, but I'm learning and growing alongside of you. And I want to honor that. And I want to honor our collective vulnerability, because I know that it could be very difficult to show up sometimes, especially in these trying times. So thank you so much for being here. And we welcome you to We Are All the Shades. Thank you.